The frigid London wind cut across my face as I stood motionless in Terminal 3, staring at the empty space where Nathan had been just moments before. The burgundy suitcase beside me and the strange sensation of the platinum ring on my finger reminded me that I had been Olivia Reed Sullivan for exactly 24 hours. "Just going to take this call, darling. Back in a minute," he had said, squeezing my hand before walking away. That was 45 minutes ago. The boarding announcements for our flight to Mauritius echoed through the terminal, but my calls to Nathan kept going straight to voicemail. I had spent the morning in a happy daze, barely believing that after our perfect wedding yesterday, we were about to embark on our 3-week honeymoon. The weight of the new ring still felt strange, exciting. Nathan had been unusually quiet during the drive to the airport, but I attributed this to fatigue from the wedding festivities. Now, standing alone amid the bustle of travelers, a terrible foreboding began to take hold. A message finally illuminated my phone screen. My hands trembled as I read, "I'm sorry, I can't do this. Don't try to find me." The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. A nearby couple gave me concerned glances as I clutched the handle of my carry-on luggage for support. The same luggage Nathan and I had chosen together, matching sets in wine red because he said they would be easy to spot. Final call for Flight BA 269 to Mauritius. The announcement cut through my thoughts. Our flight. The one we had planned for months as the perfect beginning to our perfect life together. I don't know what possessed me in that moment. Perhaps shock, perhaps defiance, or perhaps just the absolute refusal to accept that this was my reality. But I straightened my spine and walked to the gate. The tickets were already paid for, the resort booked, and somehow the thought of returning to our empty apartment, of facing our family and friends with the news that my marriage had lasted less than 24 hours, was more unbearable than boarding. That plane alone. The flight attendant's expression changed from professional cheer to concern when she saw my tear-stained face in the empty seat beside me. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" I managed to nod weakly, unable to verbalize the truth that I was embarking on my honeymoon alone, that my husband of exactly 1 day had vanished into thin air, that my entire world had imploded in the space of an hour. As the plane crossed the English Channel, my phone briefly regained signal and another message appeared. This one made my blood run cold. "Check our joint account." I fumbled with the plane's Wi-Fi, hands shaking as I accessed our banking app. The account we had opened together 3 months ago, where we had been saving for our future home, showed a balance of 0. Every penny, including my inheritance from my grandmother, was gone. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't just abandoned. I was alone, betrayed, and financially devastated at 35,000 feet, heading to a luxury resort in Mauritius that suddenly seemed like a cruel joke. I ordered a gin and tonic, my first alcoholic drink since the wedding toast yesterday. As I sipped it, trying to calm my nerves, I made a decision. This story would not end here, at this moment of absolute devastation. I didn't yet know how, but I would discover the truth about Nathan, about why he had done this, about who he really was. The man seated across the aisle glanced at me sympathetically as I wiped away another tear. If only he knew this was just the beginning of a story that would prove far more complex and devastating than even I could imagine at that moment. Stepping into the humid air of Mauritius felt surreal. The paradise I had dreamed about for months now seemed to mock me with its perfection. Palm trees swayed in the breeze, and happy couples strolled hand in hand through the airport terminal. I clutched my phone, staring at the screen displaying an increasingly disturbing sequence of emails. The first had arrived during my flight. A message from my best friend Claire. "Call me as soon as you land. Something's wrong. Isabella, Nathan's sister, just called me crying." I had met Isabella only 3 times during my year-long relationship with Nathan. She lived in Manchester and always seemed oddly reserved around me, though Nathan assured me that was just her personality. Now I wondered if she had known something all along. The hotel driver held a sign reading, "Mr. and Mrs. Sullivan," and I nearly broke down again. That name, my brand-new married name, now seemed to belong to a stranger. Still, I approached him, explaining it would be just me. His rehearsed smile never faltered, but I saw the pity in his eyes. "Will your husband be joining you later?" he asked politely as we drove along the coastal road. "No," I answered, my voice barely a whisper. "No, he won't." In my luxury suite overlooking the ocean, I finally summoned the courage to call Claire. Her voice was tight with concern when she answered. "Olivia, I don't know how to tell you this, but Isabella said Nathan was married before." My legs gave way, and I sank onto the king-sized bed that should have been our honeymoon sanctuary. "What do you mean before?" "He told me he'd never even been engaged. 3 years ago," Claire continued, her voice trembling, "to a woman named Victoria in Manchester. Isabella says he did the same thing to her. Disappeared right after the wedding. Victoria's family lost everything." The room spun around me. I thought of the perfectly crafted story Nathan had told me about growing up in London, about his thriving consultancy business, about his dreams of starting a family. How much of it had been real? With shaking fingers, I opened my laptop and began to search. It took hours, but slowly, horribly, the truth began to emerge. Nathan Sullivan wasn't even his real name. I found a newspaper article from Manchester dated 3 years ago. "Local businessman disappears after wedding, leaving trail of debt." The photo showed a woman named Victoria Patterson outside a courthouse, her face marked with the same shock and devastation I now felt. But that wasn't all. As I dug deeper, I found more. 2 years before Victoria, there had been another woman in Edinburgh. The same pattern. Whirlwind romance, lavish wedding, disappearance, different name, same man. My Nathan, or whatever his real name was. My phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. My heart stopped when I opened it. "I know what Nathan did to you. This is Victoria. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long time, the sound of waves breaking outside my window providing a strangely peaceful backdrop to my inner turmoil. The man I had married, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, was a stranger, a con artist, who had perfected his craft through multiple performances. But something didn't fit. The timing of his disappearance, the way he had ensured we checked our luggage before he vanished. It seemed different from the other cases I was reading about. And why Mauritius? Why plan such an elaborate honeymoon, if he was simply planning to disappear? I was about to reply to Victoria's message when my phone lit up with another call, this time from Nathan's number. My heart raced as I answered, but instead of his voice, I heard rapid breathing and what sounded like someone running. "Olivia," he gasped, his voice tense with what seemed like genuine fear. "Don't trust anything you're about to hear about me. I can explain everything, but I need you to do exactly what I say. Are you alone?" Before I could answer, I heard a commotion in the background, followed by the sound of breaking glass. The call cut off abruptly. I sat there, in my honeymoon suite, the setting sun casting long shadows across the room, holding my phone and trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this more manipulation? A new twist in his con? Or was something bigger going on? Something I couldn't yet comprehend. The next message I received wasn't from Nathan or Victoria, but from Isabella. "Whatever you do, don't tell anyone where you are. Your life may depend on it." I spent my first night in Mauritius alternating between tears and frantic research. Victoria had agreed to a video call, and as I waited for the appointed time, I paced back and forth in the beautiful beachfront suite that now felt more like a luxurious prison. The sound of happy tourists drifted up from the pool below, their joy a stark contrast to the chaos in my mind. When Victoria's face appeared on my screen, I felt a jolt of recognition, not because we looked alike, but because I saw in her eyes the same haunted look I had seen in my own reflection that morning. "I'm sorry this happened to you," she began, her Manchester accent soft and sympathetic. "I know exactly what you're feeling right now." But as she began to tell her story, I realized something wasn't adding up. The Nathan she described, a flashy, materialistic man who wooed her with expensive gifts and grand gestures, seemed like a completely different person from the quiet, thoughtful man I had fallen in love with. It was when she showed me her wedding photo that my world completely turned upside down. The man beside Victoria in her wedding picture wasn't Nathan. It was Ethan, Nathan's best friend, the best man at our wedding. "That's not—" I began, then stopped, my mind racing. I quickly pulled up my own wedding photos on the laptop, turning the screen to show Victoria. "This is my Nathan." Victoria's sharp intake of breath told me something was very wrong. "Olivia, that man, that's Marcus. He was Ethan's partner. He disappeared around the same time as Ethan, along with all our money." The room seemed to tilt around me. I thought of all the times Nathan had taken private calls from Ethan, about the mysterious business meetings, about how he'd insisted on handling all our wedding arrangements himself. "There's more," said Victoria, her voice trembling. "After it all happened, I did some digging. Ethan and Marcus, they weren't just con men. They were involved in something bigger, something dangerous. And Olivia, I think they may have finally messed with the wrong people." At that moment, my phone vibrated with a message from Isabella. "Don't believe everything Victoria tells you. Part of it is true, but not all. Nathan did love you. That part was real. He's in trouble, Olivia. Real trouble. And you might be too." I looked back at Victoria on my screen, studying her face. Was she telling me the whole truth? And if Nathan or Marcus or whoever he was really did love me, why disappear now? Why take my money? "Victoria," I said slowly, "the day before the wedding, Nathan asked me to transfer all our savings to a new account. He said it was for house hunting when we got back. I didn't think anything of it at the time." Victoria's expression darkened. "Did he tell you which bank?" "Swiss United," I replied. "Why?" "Because that's not a real bank, Olivia. But that name, I've heard it before. It's connected to someone very dangerous, someone Ethan and Marcus were afraid of." Before she could continue, the room phone rang, making me jump. It was the front desk. "Mrs. Sullivan, there's a gentleman here asking for you." "He says he's your brother-in-law." My heart began to race. "I don't have a brother-in-law." There was a pause on the line. "He's quite insistent, ma'am. Says it's about your husband's safety." I looked back at Victoria on my laptop screen. She had gone pale. "Olivia," she whispered, "get out of there now. There's an exit through the back, through the service area. I've been to that resort once. Get to the beach. There are always people there. I'm calling someone I know in Mauritius right now. He'll help you." As I slipped out of my room, I heard the elevator ding at the end of the corridor. Male voices emerged, speaking in low, urgent tones. I turned and ran in the opposite direction, toward the service entrance, my heart pounding. My phone vibrated again, another message from Nathan. "Whatever you do, don't let them find you. I'm sorry about everything, but this isn't what you think. Don't trust anyone until I can speak to you again." As I passed through the service door and into the humid night air, I realized I was now running from something, but I had no idea what. All I knew was that my honeymoon had morphed into something far more terrifying than just a tale of betrayal. I found a taxi and, making an effort to stay calm, asked the driver to take me to the Coral View restaurant in Blue Bay. My wristwatch, Nathan's wedding gift, suddenly felt heavy on my wrist. It was an antique family timepiece, he'd said, passed down through generations. Now I wondered if that was a lie, too. As the taxi wound along the coastal road, it occurred to me to examine the watch more closely. On the ornate face, I noticed a tiny irregularity, almost imperceptible. Using my fingernail, I managed to pry open a minuscule compartment hidden beneath the watch face. Inside was what appeared to be a microchip the size of a small fingernail. My mind flashed back to the days when I ran my digital forensics company, before my partner stole my data recovery algorithm. What had Nathan thought when he met me at that charity event? Had it been my professional background that drew him to me? Not the man I thought I knew, but someone who needed my skills. The truth began to form in my mind. I wasn't just the abandoned wife. I was a piece in a much larger game, and perhaps the only one with the skills needed to decode it. When I arrived at Coral View, a tall man about 45 years old gave me a discreet nod from a table in the back. "I'm Raphael," he said in heavily accented English. "Victoria called me. You must be Olivia." He slid a laptop across the table. Victoria said, "You're a data recovery specialist. We need to find out what's on that chip, and we need to do it before they find you." I looked at the microchip in my hand, then at the laptop. After everything that had happened, there was still one thing I trusted completely: my own abilities, from victim to investigator. It wasn't how I'd imagined my honeymoon, but for the first time since Nathan disappeared, I felt a flash of purpose. My fingers danced across the keyboard as Raphael kept watch, his restless eyes constantly scanning. The restaurant. The chip required a skill I hadn't exercised since I lost my company, but something curious began to happen as I worked. The algorithm I found embedded in the chip was strangely familiar, a modified version of the very one I had developed years ago, the same one my former partner had stolen. "This doesn't make sense," I murmured, as the data began to reveal itself. "What have you found?" Raphael leaned forward, keeping his voice low. "Coordinates, multiple GPS coordinates, programmed to reveal themselves at specific times." I looked at the watch on my wrist with new eyes. "The watch is programmed to release coordinates at precisely calculated intervals, and the next one will be in—" I checked the sequence. "Less than 2 hours." Raphael ran a hand through his graying hair. "Where?" "A marina about 20 kilometers from here." At that moment, my phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "Do you have the watch? They're looking for it. Sophia's on her way to help you." "Who is Sophia?" I asked Raphael, showing him the message. His face paled. Sophia was Nathan's, or Marcus as Victoria knew him, partner at the intelligence agency, before it all went wrong. "Intelligence agency?" I repeated, feeling as if I was losing my footing again. "What agency?" "The one trying to prevent a terrorist named Alexei from acquiring biological weapons technology," said a voice behind me. I turned to find an elegant woman with piercing eyes, dark hair cut in a precise bob. She slid into the seat beside me without invitation. "I'm Sophia," she said, extending her hand as if we were meeting at a business conference, and not in the middle of what increasingly seemed like an international espionage operation. "And you must be Olivia, the woman Nathan risked everything for." My head was spinning. "You're saying Nathan is— what? A spy?" "Was," Sophia corrected, her gaze fixed on me. "Until Ethan betrayed the agency and sold information to Alexei. When Nathan discovered it, he had to disappear, assume a new identity. That's when he met you." "And fell in love," added Raphael, with a touch of gentleness that seemed oddly out of place in this surreal conversation. "But he took my money," I argued, still trying to piece things together. "He emptied our account." "To protect you," Sophia responded. "If the money was in your name, they would trace you through it. He moved everything to a temporary secure account. Then why run the day after our wedding? Why send me to Mauritius alone?" My voice trembled with weeks of pent-up anger and pain. "Because he finally located Ethan and the evidence we needed against Alexei. But something went wrong." Sophia leaned forward. "Nathan's been missing for 3 days. We believe Ethan captured him. And now they're after the watch, and you." I looked at the watch on my wrist. The antique piece I had believed was just a sentimental gift. "These coordinates, they lead to Ethan's hideout?" "No," Sophia shook her head. "They lead to evidence incriminating Alexei, which Nathan hid in different locations in case he was captured. That's why the watch is programmed to reveal only one location at a time." I looked at the laptop, at the numbers flickering on the wall screen. In 2 hours, I would know where to go. In 2 hours, I might be closer to finding out what happened to the man I married, whether I truly knew him or not. "And what if this is just another lie?" I asked, looking from Raphael to Sophia. "How can I trust you?" "You can't," Sophia admitted. "Just as you can't trust Victoria or Isabella. We all have our own agendas in this story, but right now, you're the only person who can access those coordinates. Which means you have to make a choice." Before I could respond, Raphael stood up, abruptly. "We have company. Men at the bar just walked in. They're looking for someone." Twilight had fallen as we talked, the seaside restaurant now lit by torches and soft lights. I saw silhouettes at the bar, men in light suits who looked out of place among the casually dressed tourists. "The watch," Sophia whispered urgently. "They're here for it." In that moment, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was the adrenaline or the glimpse of purpose amid the chaos my life had become. But suddenly I knew what I had to do. "Let's go to the marina," I said, inserting a flash drive into the laptop to copy the chip's data. "But this time we dictate the terms. It's time to find out who's telling the truth." As we headed toward the back of the restaurant, slipping out through the staff exit as the suited men began to search through the tables, I realized I was no longer just Olivia Reed, the software designer abandoned on her honeymoon. I was who I needed to be right now, the centerpiece in a deadly game of chess that I was finally ready to play. The salty air of the marina cut across my face as we approached silently. The full moon reflected on the water, illuminating the anchored yachts that gently rocked with the waves. The watch on my wrist read exactly 11:42 p.m., less than 3 minutes until the next coordinate would be revealed. "Keep to the shadows," Sophia instructed, her hand firm on my elbow as Raphael checked the perimeter. My heart hammered against my ribs, a mixture of fear and determination propelling me forward. In 3 days, I had gone from happy bride to abandoned wife to suspected player in international espionage. Now, as we waited in the shadows of a waterfront warehouse, I barely recognized my own life. The watch vibrated softly, a mechanism I had never noticed before. On the small screen embedded in the antique face, numbers began to appear, revealing precise coordinates. "There," I pointed discreetly to a white yacht anchored at the end of the pier. "That's it. The Aurora." Raphael nodded, disappearing into the shadows to check the vessel, while Sophia and I remained hidden. "How did you meet Nathan?" I asked quietly, still searching for truth amid the chaos. "The real story." Sophia kept her eyes fixed on the yacht. "We were trained together. He was brilliant, but had one fatal flaw for an agent: too much heart." She gave me a meaningful look. "That's why he fell for you, even knowing he shouldn't. And why he couldn't completely abandon you, even when he needed to disappear." I shook my head, still processing. "And Victoria? Isabella? Where do they fit in all this?" "Victoria is MI6 monitoring Ethan after he conned and stole money to fund his operation with Alexei. Isabella," she hesitated. "Isabella was our liaison with an international watchdog group until we discovered she was working both sides." Raphael emerged from the shadows, gesturing urgently. "Found something. We need to go now." We made our way along the pier, keeping low between boats. The Aurora was larger than it had appeared from a distance, a luxury yacht with darkened windows that revealed only glimpses of light within. Sophia drew a gun, a visual shock that brutally reminded me of the gravity of the situation. "Stay behind me," she instructed as we silently boarded. The yacht's interior was deserted, but signs of recent occupation were evident. An open laptop on the dining table, scattered maps, half-full glasses. "Look for a safe or hidden compartment," Sophia whispered. "The watch should guide us to the exact location." I looked at the watch again. Something had changed on the face. Not just coordinates, but a sequence of numbers that seemed familiar. A sequence I had encoded years ago in my original algorithm. "It's an access code," I murmured, moving toward a painting on the main cabin wall. My instinct was right. Behind it, a digital safe waited. My fingers trembled slightly as I typed in the sequence. The safe opened with a soft click, revealing an external storage drive and a thin folder. "Found it!" I called softly, but in the same instant, I heard heavy footsteps above us on the deck. Raphael rushed to the window. "We have company. A lot of company." Sophia pulled the drive and folder from the safe, pushing them into my hands. "You need to get out of here with this now. We'll use the lifeboat at the stern." "What about Nathan?" I asked, my voice betraying desperation. "This doesn't tell us where he is." A metallic sound reverberated through the yacht, the main cabin door being forced open. Sophia pushed me toward a side hatch, her intense eyes meeting mine. "In the folder, Olivia. Nathan's location is in the folder, but you'll only have a..." Chance to save him if you get out of here now? The next scenes unfolded like fragments of a nightmare. Raphael and Sophia creating a diversion as I escaped in the boat, the sound of gunshots echoing across the marina. Me rowing frantically to the opposite shore, hidden by darkness. Adrenaline pulsing through me, keeping panic at bay as I did the unthinkable. Hours later, in an anonymous hotel room on the other side of the island, far from the luxury resort, where my honeymoon should have taken place, I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were dossiers, photographs, documents, and a map with a location marked just a few kilometers away. On the last page, a handwritten note in the handwriting I would recognize anywhere. Olivia, if you're reading this, it means you're even more extraordinary than I imagined. Forgive me for everything. You were the only real thing in a life of lies. Find me where the rising sun first touches the island. Come alone. Come armed with the truth. N. I closed my eyes, exhausted, terrified, and against all logic, hopeful. Tomorrow at dawn, I would finally discover if the man I loved, whoever he really was still alive. And then we would have to face the hardest question of all. After everything, was there any chance for us? 18 months can change everything. This is the truth I wake up to every morning as I watch the snow falling softly outside the window of our chalet in the Swiss mountains. The sun is just beginning to touch the distant peaks, reminding me of that morning in Mauritius when I finally found Nathan, or Marcus, as I now know is his real name. He was hidden in a small fisherman's cabin, injured but alive, his eyes reflecting relief and fear as I walked through the door. You came, he said simply, as if he had doubted until that moment. I did, I replied, the folder of evidence and storage drive in my hands like a shield between us. Now tell me who you really are. The day that followed was the longest of my life. The full truth finally emerged about the international intelligence agency he worked for, about how Ethan had betrayed them all by selling secrets to weapons. Dealer Alexei, about how Marcus, Nathan, had realized his own identity was compromised. I never planned to fall in love, he said, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. You were supposed to be just temporary cover, but then what? I pressed, still uncertain if I could believe anything he said. Then you were you, he answered. Simply. Brilliant, incisive, compassionate, real, in a world where I lived only in falsehoods. The evidence we recovered from the yacht was the final blow against Alexei's operation. With the help of Sophia, who survived the marina shootout, and Marcus's trusted contacts, we sent the evidence to the appropriate authorities. Ethan was captured trying to leave the country, and Alexei's network began to crumble, though Alexei himself disappeared, a ghost who still haunts our occasional thoughts. Now, as I make coffee in the small kitchen of our mountain hideaway, I mentally review the code I'm developing for my new digital security company. After everything that happened, my old algorithm seems almost childish compared to what I can now create. Marcus enters quietly, still limping slightly from the wound that nearly took his life in Mauritius. His eyes are more sober now, marked by what we've lived through, but they still brighten when they meet mine. The Witness Protection Program called, he says, placing his phone on the table. They have new identities for us if we want them. California this time. I nod thoughtfully, considering the offer. After Ethan's trial, we agreed to enter the program temporarily. Not because Ethan still posed a threat, he took a deal to implicate associates in exchange for a reduced sentence, but because as long as Alexei remained at large, we would never be completely safe. And what do you want? I ask, passing him a cup of coffee. His gaze is penetrating, honest in a way I've learned to recognize as genuine. I want what I've wanted since I met you, a real life, even if it has to be under different names. I look at the antique watch on my wrist, the same one that contained the secrets that saved our lives, now just a symbol of what we've been through together. Marcus insisted I keep it, its secret mechanisms now deactivated, transformed back into a simple family heirloom. I don't want any more lies between us, I finally say, no matter what name we use. The laptop on the living room table blinks with a notification, a potential client for my digital security company operating under a name no one would associate with me. I can never use my previous work as reference, never contact old friends or family. That was the price I chose to pay. Marcus approaches, placing a small package on the table in front of me. This arrived yesterday. From Sophia. Inside, I find a flash drive and a simple note. Thought you'd want to know. Victoria is well. New identity, new life. Sometimes fresh starts are the only viable option. Take care, S. I look at Marcus. This man I knew as Nathan. This stranger who became my husband. This spy who became my partner in a life I never imagined living. I think I like the idea of California, I finally say, as long as we're together. His smile is cautious, but genuine. Just like our unusual love story. As the snow continues to fall outside, I think about the watch that changed everything, the coordinates that guided me through chaos, the choices that made me who I am today. I am no longer just Olivia Reed, or even Olivia Sullivan. I am a woman who discovered her own strength amid betrayal and danger, who learned that even the most elaborate lies can hide profound truths. And as Marcus wraps his arms around me, I know we will continue to look over our shoulders for the rest of our lives. We know Alexei is still out there somewhere. We know our future will never be completely secure. But we also know another truth. Sometimes you need to lose everything, identity, security, certainties, to discover what truly matters. And that, perhaps, is enough to build a life upon, even if it's one we never imagined living.